Hello, everybody, and welcome to NFL Insiders. Wendy Nix here with Ed Werder, Jarrett Bell, and Hall of Famer Bill Polian. We'll start this afternoon with one of the bigger storylines of this offseason, the future of Tony Romo. In fact, the Romo watch continues since the emergence of Dak Prescott as the Cowboys' starting quarterback. It appears all but certain that Romo will move on. Jerry Jones has said publicly that he alone will make the decision regarding Romo, but it's widely believed he will work in tandem with the quarterback to find a suitable solution. Now, there are several routes he can take. The Cowboys can keep Romo, but his $24.7 million is the highest among any quarterback in the league. They could release him, but even that would cost them $20 million in 2017, and he would still have the highest cap hit on the Cowboys. They could spread that cap hit over 2 seasons by releasing him with a post-June 1st designation, or they can trade him. That scenario would likely require a restructuring of Romo's deal to give the acquiring team some financial assurances. Before we talk about where Tony Romo may end up, I'll just ask you, Ed, if there's any sort of timeline regarding the decision.
Well, not specifically, but you sort of get the sense that once Jerry and Tony get together and decide what direction they want to go and how they'd like to manage this and what they want the outcome to be, that around the combine would be a natural time for other teams to start, expressing interest in Romo, either directly to him or potentially through a trade. But I've been told that Romo expects to be released, not to be traded, and that's really the best possible outcome for him, because then he totally controls his future and can decide which team he wants to play for next. But he thinks he can start for 2 or 3 more seasons as an NFL quarterback, although certainly people will question the validity of that given his injury history.
No question. And, Bill, from a team perspective, though, when we look at those options about trading and releasing or keeping him, what option makes the most sense?
Release actually makes the most sense, because you're not going to get a lot for him on the open market in a trade. A trade is complicated because of the contract. An acquiring team doesn't want that contract. Release gives you, with a June 1 designation, gives you cap relief this year and cap relief next year. So that makes cap room in this marketplace is really good for them, and it makes a lot of sense because they can use that for a defensive player. So it's as though they're acquiring something.
And in terms of Romo, that gives him enough time, does it, to make a decision?
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's June 1st?
Yeah, assuming March 9th would be the day upon which you do it, or that would be the deadline day, then that gives him plenty of time to find a team. And besides which, there are not going to be that many teams that he's interested in. There may be a lot of teams that are interested, but not a lot that he's interested in.
In terms of injury risk, how big a bill do you think this is compared to, like, the Peyton Manning injury?
Well, the Peyton Manning injury was one that was unexpected, and then all of a sudden it cropped up, and then Denver essentially bought the insurance to cover that. In this particular case, you're going to structure the contract in such a way that you'll protect yourself against injury, and Tony's going to have to recognize that that's the case.
And one thing to point out, if you talk about trade versus release, well, if you're a team that's interested in acquiring Tony Romo, basically it's a matter of just waiting. From the Cowboys' perspective, yes, this is part of the due diligence. You show Tony Romo, one of your signature players, obviously over the course of the past few years. You show him the proper respect by trying to work the process in that regard. But if someone wants to trade for Tony Romo with that injury history, with that contract and all of those elements that would be in play here, you just bide your time, and then you can get him on the open market.
You're not getting much in a trade anyway if you're the Cowboys.
He's played 5 games over the last 2 seasons. I think there has to be some perspective. As we look at some potential landing spots, we'll go through and look at the validity, if you will, of each. And the first that I think a lot of people are talking about are the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, and you talked about the Peyton Manning situation from a couple of years ago. Well, what's the difference with Tony Romo? Tony Romo had a tough time behind the Cowboys' offensive line, the best offensive line in football. Can you imagine him behind the Denver Broncos' offensive line, which has a lot of work that needs to be done to upgrade it? I think that could be a tough situation.
But again, he's 37 years old. John Elway won 2 Super Bowls late in his 30s, and Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl as a Bronco quarterback late in his 30s.
You would also think that's somewhere that Romo would not mind playing. This is interesting because the Chiefs would have to believe they sort of hit their ceiling with their current quarterback. But, Bill, what about the Chiefs?
I don't know about this. I think Andy Reid is really in bed with his quarterback. I think he feels that guy's invested a lot. He's invested a lot in him. I don't see that Tony, who's in a situation where He's part-time probably at best because of injury. You know, you have to look at that with a clear set of eyes, the green eye shade, so to speak. I don't see this.
And it's not like the Chiefs are a team that really doesn't have a guy in place in Alex Smith right now. So that's one of the differences here. It's like they're not
Alex
desperate.
Smith is mobile. Tony, at this stage of his career, is not.
That's also true. Now, the next situation, really different in Houston because they thought they had their guy. They made one of the bigger splashes of the offseason last year. I would assume Osweiler's contract would have to be restructured to make this work. But it does make sense on the surface.
Well, they owe Osweiler $37 million guaranteed over the life of his contract. It seems like he has to be a part of the equation in some way this year. But I think that Bill O'Brien and Tony Romo would be a good match. I think proximity to Dallas would be attractive to Tony for family considerations. And I think he looks at them as a team that he's probably the most curious about because of the quality of their defense, the ability with the offensive line, some pieces in place at center and left tackle to protect him. And they've got terrific young weapons in the passing game and at running back.
Yeah, if you talk about a team being one player away, a quarterback away, it's Houston, right? I mean,
well, I don't think they're one player away. I'm not sure those receivers are as good as people have made them out to be. But here's the one thing that they have, and you're going to need if you're going to bring in Tony. You better have a quality backup. Whether that's Savage or Osweiler is immaterial, but you better have a quality backup because you can't say Tony's playing 16 games.
You simply cannot. I would think that would be the #1 prerequisite besides the offensive line.
Romo will make the receivers better than Osweiler made them, I bet you.
Well, you got to catch the ball, though, and Will Fuller doesn't.
You guys can do what you want, but I think we're going to be quick on this next one, but I'll let you decide. Well, if it comes up, here we go.
Bing. Boom.
Well.
Bam.
Oh, there we go. Third time's the charm. How about the Browns?
Move on.
Okay, I agree. Let's just keep going. Now, finally.
That's what Tony said.
Now, this situation, although unlikely, obviously because of the economics of the situation, can you see a scenario where Tony Romo stays in Dallas, Ed, as the backup quarterback?
I can't, and not just for the cap purposes. You know, Tony Romo's a competitive guy. If he's going to be there, he wants to have the opportunity to start at quarterback, and he's not going to get that opportunity with the rookie season that Dak Prescott just had and all the promise he presents to Jerry Jones, Jason Garrett for the future.
Well, and there's enough respect there, I think, mutual respect from Jerry Jones and Tony Romo to say, hey, if you think you can start, let's see if we can get you an opportunity.
I mean, Jerry would love for that to happen, but
Yeah,
I just don't think it's feasible.
Yeah, and the Cowboys
said Tony's very much focused on playing 2 or 3 more years as a starter.